The Battle of Phillora, armor, fire, and the collapse of certainty in the 1965 war. In September 1965, the plains of Punjab became the stage for one of the largest and most decisive armored clashes of the post-World War order. The Battle of Phillora, fought between the armored formation of India and Pakistan, was not merely a collision of steel and fire. It was a confrontation between two doctrines, two psychological constructions, and two competing theories of modern mechanized warfare. The encounter emerged after 2 weeks of escalating tensions across the subcontinent. But the engagement near Phillora became the moment where armor ceased to be an abstraction and transformed into the decisive arbiter of the conflict's tempo. What unfolded was not a balanced duel but a systematic breakdown of Pakistani tactical assumptions under the relentless forward pressure of Indian 1st Armoured Division. The terrain around Phillora appeared deceptively calm at dawn on 10th of September 1965. Villages were scattered across a flat, dust-heavy expanse interrupted only by irrigation channels, patches of vegetation, and the occasional mound that provided limited cover. Yet the landscape was ideal for tanks, open enough for maneuver, firm enough for tank mobility, and expansive enough that engagement ranges fluctuated unpredictably. By the time the Indian Centurions rolled forward, the battlefield had already begun its transformation. Dust clouds created shifting optical illusions, and smoke from the earlier skirmishes drifted low, thinning visibility in inconsistent bands. The sensory environment was hostile to static defenders, but favorable to a force that attacked with momentum. This asymmetry would prove decisive. Pakistan entered the battle anchored to an assumption: the American-supplied M48 Patton would dominate the Indian Centurion. In theoretical terms, the Patton's stabilized gun, advanced night fighting optics, and heavier frontal armor should have provided an edge. The Patton had cultivated an aura of invincibility. Within Pakistan's strategic imagination, the belief was simple and rigid: superior machine guns guaranteed battlefield success. That assumption created a flaw that became visible the moment the fighting intensified. Pakistani crews were conditioned to believe that hardware would compensate for tactical inflexibility. The battlefield punished that belief immediately. The India's first armored division fought according to a different logic. Its doctrine was a stripped down version of mobile warfare: push, fire, adjust, advance. The Centurion Mk 7/2 carried the 105 mm L7 gun, a weapon of such penetrating power and accuracy that its effectiveness outweighed theoretical disadvantages in armor and electronics. Indian tank commanders emphasized tempo rather than spectacle. Every maneuver was designed to compress Pakistani response time, forcing their Pattons to react instead to initiate. As the Centurions closed distance, they fired with a steady rhythm that ignored the psychological weight of the patent myth. What mattered was the target acquisition speed, the ability to sustain pressure until the opposing formation cracked. The first major Pakistani position held Phillora crumbled faster than commanders anticipated. Indian armor swept through the forward elements with disciplined bursts of fire, reducing defensive pockets into burning clusters of metal. Patton turrets erupted vertically when penetrated, sending fireballs and shrapnels into the sky. Dramatic, violent signatures of catastrophic ammunition cook-off. These explosions were not random accidents, they represent a structural vulnerability of the Patton when struck at specific angles by APDS rounds. The Indian advance produced these explosions with unsettling consistency, eroding morale and creating shockwaves across Pakistani units that expected a systematic contest, not a rout. By midday, the battle had transformed from a clash into a collapse. Pakistani counterattacks attempted to stabilize the line, but each effort was met with a coordinated Indian fire that dislocated their formations. The Pattons, forced into hurried maneuvers on unfavorable angles, lost sight alignment and firing positions. A tank that cannot stabilize its gun is an armored liability, but not an advantage. Indian centurions exploited this ruthlessly. They moved in staggering waves, each wave firing as another reposition to deny Pakistani armor any coherent counter-attack geometry. Anti-tank guns attempted to delay the advance, but they were overrun in rapid bursts of violence that turned trench lines into chaotic rubble. Smoke rose everywhere, black spiral columns marking the death of the Patton myth. The destruction across the battlefield accumulated with mathematical inevitability. Burning hulls littered the ground, tracks, roads, engine blocks, ruptured fuel drums marked a path where Indian armor had passed. Silence never lasted long, but few minutes another pattern erupted. Every few minutes another pattern erupted. Sometimes because of direct fire, sometimes from secondary explosions as stored ammunition ignited hours after initial impact. The psychological environment shifted permanently. Pakistan no longer believed its armor was superior, and India no longer feared parity. The battle had rewritten expectations entirely. Pakistan's surviving units withdrew to Chawinda, attempting to reorganize more favorable defensive positions, but the retreat itself symbolized a strategic defeat. Phillora had fallen, and with it the tactical foundation of Pakistan's planned armored counteroffensive. What remained was a defensive war of attrition fought under the shadow of broken assumptions. The Indian advance, though later contested at Chawinda, had already achieved its strategic purpose. The power imbalance was no longer theoretical. It had been demonstrated through fire, steel, and battlefield geometry. Phillora remains one of the clearest examples in South Asian military history of the difference between technological superiority and doctrinal competence. The Patton was not a flawed machine. It failed because it was misused, misinterpreted, and overtrusted. The Centurion was not a miracle tank. It succeeded because it was integrated into a coherent system of maneuver, discipline, and fire control. Armored warfare doesn't reward hardware fantasies. It rewards formation that understands momentum. Phillora was momentum incarnate. When historians describe the battle as decisive, they are acknowledging more than a tactical victory. Phillora was psychological rupture. It provided that a formation built on disciplined aggression could dismantle a formation built on illusion. It demonstrated that armor is not a symbol, it is a weapon whose effectiveness is contingent upon doctrine, training, and the refusal to halt when enemy expectations hesitations. Above all, Phillora illustrated the brutal arithmetic of mechanized war. When two armored forces meet, victory belongs not to the stronger machines, but to the system that controls the battlefield long enough to dictate the terms of destruction.